Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Living Astrology with Janet. It is time to grab that cup of coffee or your tea, to sit back and relax while we chat about what is happening up in the stars above us for the weekend. Yay. My husband went back to work this week, so it's been kind of horrible having to get up every morning at 6 a.m. It's one thing when you do it for fun or because that's just your regular body rhythm. It's quite another thing in the winter when you have to do it and it's dark until it's still dark. Uh Whatever, right? We have to carry on and we have to do what we do. Oh, I hope all of you have had a good week. It has been the first week of writing for me with the Energy Almanac 2026. I just want to remind all of you that the 2025 Almanac is still available, and I am going to host a class next week about how to use the Almanac in a better, more useful manner, and as well talk about the Human Design New Year. So, more details coming up on that. But for one thing, I just want to be able to, I mean, it is, a book that has so much to offer in it, right? And this is the 2025, so the Energy Almanac. And as I was chatting with one of my daughters this week, she told me how beneficial this is the first year because I give them one every year that I've been writing this. So for 7 years. This is the first year that she said, Mom, I'm loving using the Energy Almanac. She said, I never really, I mean, she's read it, but not really dove into acting from it. And I just want to show you something like I did in my own, which is I went through and I listed, remember the calendar I gave you for January? Well, I just took that and put the main ideas here on this calendar. And what I want to do in next week's webinars, I want to talk to you guys about how to find your own information. Like, for instance, Mars opposing Pluto. Let's just do that one. That was back on January 4th, but it's going to be in a specific house and it's going to be in specific signs, obviously. And you would do well to know where those are. And I'm going to show you how to do that. So, for example, Mars in opposing Leo was in my second house and my eighth house. So I could put second and eighth there, right? Just so I know in my own chart where that's happening. And you could do the same. And I'm going to make astrologers out of all of you, right? So that you all can use these tools on a daily basis for yourselves, right? That is the key. And that'll be on the 16th. We're going to be doing that at noon, my time. So that is noon. That is 3 p.m. for those of you on the East Coast. My brain is slowly moving this morning. And it'll be free, right? It's a free webinar to start the year. We'll also be talking about the Human Design New Year, which begins on the 22nd, and how that shows us what the themes are that will be primary throughout the 2025 year. Anyway, in the meantime, I am writing the 2026 and having an interesting time, writing. We always write a year ahead. So it's always interesting. It takes a little while to get into, another year, especially when one on the calendar has just begun. So anyway, if I seem a little crazed, that's probably why. Let's say good morning to people who are checking in with us today. Diana S., morning from a soggy, cold New Orleans. Yay. Or not. It sounds like the cold air has dipped way down to the south. Leilani, good morning to you. Debbie Tibbetts Tumiel, happy Friday to you as well. And she said the last time, Diana says, the last time the nodes were in Pisces and Virgo, I was dealing with the aftermath of Katrina. Lots of water, right? Lots of water that time. Gayla, good morning to you. And Diana says, she has her almanac. Also, her ascendant is Virgo, moon, which is, or in Virgo, and moon is in Virgo. We share that. I have the moon in Virgo. Mars in Pisces. It's interesting to watch me grow and mature. I love it. I love that you can see that in yourself. And good morning, Tom. He says, howdy, Astro family. Always a little crazy. Mm. you or me or both of us. We're both Geminis, right? So we're both, half in and half out of our minds most of the time. All right. So today we're going to be talking about the node shifting, which they do tomorrow out of the signs of Aries and Libra, where they have been for the last 18 months, and into the signs of Pisces and Virgo. And you may notice that's out of order, right? Aries usually goes toward Taurus, only the nodes are always moving backwards or retrograde through the chart. And as they are moving backwards, then they're moving into a sign of spirit, right? And a sign that brings lots of different things together. It's the north node that will be in Pisces, it's the south node that will be in Virgo. And we'll talk more about what that means in terms of what are we moving toward collectively and what are we releasing collectively, because that's what the nodes are really about, right? Our path of destiny, how we move forward is the north node, how we evolve our consciousness, and what do we need to let go of or do differently? How do we apply our gifts and our talents in new ways? That is what the south node is all about in Virgo. We start the weekend, though, with the moon. I'm counting today as the weekend. We start the weekend with the moon in Gemini. And then today, this morning, as the moon was transiting, it went into a square to Venus. And so we start the day with this dynamic tension. A square is always going to bring up tension, right? And the tension is between our emotional world, the moon, and our desire self, which is Venus, and the desire for harmony, for connection, and all of that type of thing. Venus is right now transiting through the sign of Pisces, a sign where she is exalted, which means she loves it there, right? She loves the whole idea of love that Pisces brings, the inclusivity that Pisces brings, the universal love, unconditional love, all of the high Piscean traits Venus is really good at, right? And she applies those things to your relationships, your love, romantic, platonic friendships, as well as to your values, your worth, and also to your finances, right? Finances apply here as well. So the key themes then with the moon now in a square to Venus is that there's this prompting perhaps of some emotional sensitivity, right? Where we're experiencing heightened emotions, especially in your relationships, or especially if it relates to your own self-worth or lack thereof, right? If you're feeling low about yourself, it might be amplified with emotional energy as Venus is moving through, or as the moon is moving into the square with Venus. It can also be potentially tension in your relationships or conflicts with loved ones, not just your, you know, uh, like husbands or wives or girlfriends, the people that you live with, but even further out, right, to your business partnerships or business relationships. So watch for that. And it can be that there's this more apparent difference between your values and your needs, right? So you may look out there and say, this relationship isn't fulfilling my needs and I don't feel valued, that type of thing. And there can be a struggle here between personal comfort and social obligations. That's what Venus is really, if she's going to create turmoil with the moon, it's going to be about the feeling we have of indulging ourselves. And then also on the other side going, "Ew, but that takes me away from my responsibilities to the people that are in my life." So we have to, balance. That's what the squares do, right? The squares for not necessarily balance evenly, but there's this tension that causes us to have to look deeper into the energy of what is going on. And in this case, it's between Pisces energy and the moon's energy in Gemini. So mindfulness comes to mind here, right? Mindfulness, mindful communication, taking extra care in how you express yourself, how you express your feelings to avoid misinterpretation, right? We don't want people to hear one thing when you meant something else. Prioritize activities that are about self care. Taking care of you is primary in importance. If you aren't strong, if you don't have enough resources, then how can you possibly be there for others, right? You'll be dipping into your sustainability, right? You won't be able to make that sustainable. Avoid impulsive decisions right now. Squares sometimes muddle up things, right? Make it hard for us to determine which direction to go. Be cautious in spending. Venus does rule money, and making relationship commitments might be something you want to slow down, especially with Mars retrograde at this point in time. But there is an opportunity for some self reflection during this period. Enhanced empathy, Pisces in the sign of, I mean, Venus in the sign of Pisces really amps up the empathy and compassion quotient. And we want to make sure that we are tapping into that for both ourselves and for other people, right? Having the inner wherewithal to have compassion pointed at yourself and also at others. So if you feel like there are internal or external conflicts that are coming up today, take a moment to pause and reflect, and maybe take a meditative moment. Maybe go outside and do some deep breathing. If it's too cold outside, do it inside, right? Take some time to do some things that are going to fit with you. Now, later in the day today, the moon is going to conjunct Jupiter in Gemini. And this brings some expansive and curious energy to the day. So, with the moon representing emotions and intuition, and Jupiter symbolizing growth, abundance, and wisdom, the alignment of the two together encourages us to communicate our big ideas, either by writing them down for yourself, or for sharing them with your friends or with your family. It is a surge of mental energy likely that we'll feel as the moon moves closer to Jupiter today. And it makes it an excellent time for brainstorming, right? If you have something that you need to work through, find a friend, find a relative, somebody that you jive with, and sit down and brainstorm together. Share your ideas and try to flesh them out somewhat. Conversations today after this point can feel more lively and expansive, and can feel more optimistic. Right, optimism is pretty high right now. Anyway, there is this feeling. I know some people aren't going to be very optimistic right now, and that's okay. But there is the potential for optimism as things are changing quickly. And there's this potential then for emotional growth, even as the nodes prepare to shift into Pisces, the North Node anyway. This emotional growth is taking place. And then, of course, Gemini is a social sign. So there's the potential to be more active socially, whether that's in social media or whether that is with your friends or people that you like to be around. So, a tip for this period of time, because Jupiter magnifies and amplifies, and in Gemini, it is amplifying mind energy, communication energy. So, and Gemini's fast moving, right? So, Jupiter's expansiveness can sometimes lead to overcommitment, a scattered sense of focus. So, focus on the ideas or connections that truly light you up. Let the rest go, or you end up in mental anxiety, right? Jupiter, remember, magnifies. So, if there's a lot of mind chatter, that's being amplified. So, be watchful for that. As we move further into the weekend, the moon will square Saturn. It will also square Neptune. And those are times where the square again challenges us to be, in this case, practical at the same time that we want to be in imagination and inspirited or inspired. So those things kind of knock against one another. So It's just one of those things we're going to go through for this weekend. Later in the weekend, that calms down as the moon will shift into the sign of Cancer and won't meet up with Mars until later in that transit, but will definitely take on more emotions, more intuition, more introspection later in the weekend. So, how's everybody doing out there? Let's see. Jamon, good morning. Tom says, all of us here. Terry, you managed to check in even though you're at work today. I love it. Thank you. Christine Buckingham, is that especially impactful for Pisces, Sun, and Mercury? Any of you who are Pisces or Virgo, or who have planets in Pisces and Virgo, this will be amped up for you. And everything that's kind of happening today could be considered a prelude to the nodes shifting tomorrow, right? So we're practicing compassion. We're practicing this idea of unity and universal love. And what better way to do it in such a polarized world that we are in, right? Um, it's how we learn, right? It wouldn't be out there in our outer world if it isn't something that we are holding as a group or as a you know, humanity collective. And it gives us ample time here to sort of practice and work up to becoming more of the exalted side of Pisces, which lets go of victimhood and transforms into spirithood, right? Where spirit is free and spirit is all wise, all loving, and it gives us those opportunities to practice all of that. But it can feel a little bit daunting if you are already dealing with the Piscean energy. And all we can do is move with compassion for ourselves and others during this period of time. Take each thing as it comes up, release victimhood, right? That is the big release. Release it, let it go, right? There's no need for us to stay in that victimhood. And that victimhood is a kind of an artifact of our fear that based in our DNA has kept us alive, right, as humans for the millennia, but is also something that keeps holding us back and holding us down. So this will give us ample opportunities to be able to move through that. And I expect that that's going to be easier some days than others, right? It's just going to have to be that way. Okay, TD Hawk, good morning to you. Joan Durchie, good morning. Then we have other people, I'm sure, checking in because the numbers are going up, but I don't see new comments. So let's move on, shall we? The North nodes. So every 18 months, the nodes will shift, right? And when they shift, the focus for us collectively changes as well, right? There's a shift going on in what we're focusing on. And the nodes are also where the eclipses are, right? So when where the nodes go, the eclipses go. And whether that is an eclipse like a north node eclipse that gives us the gift of something coming for the future, or if it's a south node eclipse that gives us the warning that this isn't working, you've got to let this go. They move us ahead, they evolve us, right? Now, they don't take away your own natal nodes, right? So if you are a node in a north node in Leo, a south node in Aquarius, that doesn't leave for you personally, but now you may find it enhanced or triggered by the move of the nodes to Pisces and Virgo. So I hope that makes sense, right? It's all about the collective move, but you're part of the collective. So you also get triggered by this. Now, as the North Node transits Pisces, and this again will be 18 months worth of transit, we are called to address feelings of guilt about not doing enough, about not being enough. And we're being called to step away from tendencies to overthink and overanalyze. Those Virgoan tendencies go away. This transit is going to encourage us to trust in a greater plan and to cultivate faith. Faith. I, that could be your word for the year, faith. And it's time to nurture things like self-love and trust in that are in ourselves, self-trust, fostering deeper understanding and tolerance for all people, kindness, right? Generous spirit energy. And we're learning humility as well by recognizing that neither we nor anyone else needs to be perfect. In fact, we are all perfect as we are in this moment, or else we would be something else, right? It would be different. So we always have to remember that with Pisces and Virgo. It is an axis that takes us into victimhood on one end and martyrhood on the other if we go into the shadows of these two big energies, the bigger shadows of these energies. So this period of time will invite us to expand our imagination, right? Pisces, imagination, and behind the scenes work. There's a service orientation here. Virgo is a sign of service. And how do we bring that service of love to the world in our specific ways? Not you doing it the way I do it, but doing what it is that you do to share of yourself, right? Of your gifts and of your talents. Spend more quality time alone in reflection as well during this period of time. You want to be able to connect with your inner muse, if you will, right? The part of you that can tap into creativity and imagination. Prioritize mental and emotional well-being over an obsession with rules or perfectionism, because that can lead you to greater inner harmony versus the stress of thinking everything needs to be different than it is. Releasing fears of failure, releasing guilt. Uh, by doing that, we end up creating more space for love and for our sense of serenity and peace, inner peace, and balance in our lives. So it is an essential period of time and one that we haven't been through for about 18 and a half years, right? And as Diana said earlier, that takes us back to 2004, 2005. And some of the things that happened in that year were kind of crazy as it relates to water, right? There was the tsunami in 2004. There was Katrina, I think it was in 2005. Now, I'm not saying we're going to have big water events, but be prepared, right? That's one of the things. The nature of the beast is that water is primary. So let's look at a little deeper here. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to go into presentation mode. Um, Entire screen. This one. There we go. Perfect. And then I'm going to put this into presentation. So you bear with me for one moment so you don't get cluttered up with everything else going on here. This is from the presentation, whoops, that I did for Astrology of 2025. All right, so here are some of the things to focus on as we shift out of the energy of Aries and Libra and into Pisces and Virgo. So first of all, with the North Node in Pisces, the focus becomes compassion and spiritual growth. And our hearts crack open a bit during this period of time, right? Our hearts get broken emotionally or get cracked open emotionally. And in a way, what that does is opens us up to being more loving. It draws us toward, I guess you would say, embracing unity and unconditional love and spirituality, right? It's really bringing us to this point. So it's time to let go of rigid boundaries and allow yourself to dream big, not small, but big. It's about finding trust in the flow of life and letting your intuition guide you to the right choices that make sense for you, right? Not letting your mind overanalyze. Um, you'll notice that if we go to the other side here, South Node in Virgo is about releasing perfectionism and overthinking, overanalyzing, getting out of paralysis, right? That is the paralysis that fear can and overthinking can get us into that leads us to anxiety. Creativity and inspiration is another North Node in Pisces uh, like high side, I guess you could say. Creativity and inspiration that inspires us to be imaginative and to, rise in artistry, if you will, the creative energy being uniquely yours, right? How do you uniquely show up that way? People in general may be drawn to express themselves through creative pursuits, and they may also be drawn to explore things like mysticism, meditation, spiritual practices, things like that. So if you find yourself being, energized by those things, that is telling you that's the direction of the North Node in Pisces. We also have to have faith and trust in a divine plan during this period of time. There is something bigger going on, something that we don't always see, right? If we saw all the details, there would be no point in being on the planet, right? There, we would already know everything. We would not have any opportunities for growth. So this is an 18-month period where faith and trust and surrender, recognizing that the hand of the divine and that you are partly divine, and this is your time, right, to surrender to that divine plan, liberating us, right? In some ways, this can be very liberating to trust in a higher plan and realize that there's nothing that you need do, right? It's all happening. All you have to do is follow your intuition and trust in the plan for yourself. And of course, there's healing through that surrender, right? When we surrender, we're also healing. It's a time to commit to mental and emotional health, not the emotional health is where we're moving. The mental health is what we have to contend with because that is where we've been, right? We've been in this mental fatigue, if you will, right? Information overload, a lot of mind numbingness, right, going on. A lot of that leads to anxiety and to mental health issues. And that is what we have to release in favor of becoming more emotionally healthy. This is a big deal, people, because as we move into 2027, it's funny because I'm writing 2026, but there's 3 months of 2027 in the 2026 book because we're moving it to be the astrological year, which doesn't follow the Gregorian calendar. So 2027 is the year of the big evolutionary change in our human design, right? The year where we start for the next 400 years, where we become more emotionally engaged. We lead to more emotional intelligence. So, this is practice, right? The nodes shifting into Pisces and Virgo gives us practice for becoming more emotionally healthy. And there are potential challenges during this time because what do we do when our emotions get high and we don't know what to do? We don't know how to express it. We escape, right? We go into our phones, we go into TV, Netflix. Um, I'm watching the best show right now. It's called Queer Eye, and oh my God, if you need uplifting, go watch that show on Netflix. They are called the Fab Five. I never even heard of the show before, but it kept popping up, and I thought I'm going to try this show. And they are the sweetest, most gentle people, and they are impacting others, uplifting people. It's amazing to me to watch this happening. Anyway, so escapism, right? That was to say I was escaping into Queer Eye, um, but also confusion. And as you know, so many things seem to barrage us during any day or news cycle week. And that can lead us to have to get out of our minds. Literally, you're getting out of your mind and getting more into your emotional self, right? Your inner self. Idealism without practicality is another challenge. Pisces is extremely idealistic, but it needs the Virgo other end to practically express those ideals. So we don't want to let go completely of Virgoan tendencies. We want to ground the highest and best of those Virgo qualities, right? The ability to be practical and organized and planning, right? And of course, fear. This is the axis of fear. Um, it's more appropriately called maybe the axis of a victim savior sort of energies. And it's one where all of the fears may be triggered, right? The fears of annihilation, right? There's a lot of that, going on. So we have to release all of that. And on the Virgo side, integrating Virgo's gifts of discernment and service and organization, but doing so in healthy ways, not ways that get us so mind oriented that we, blow up the mind. There's healing through practicality, and we have to watch for the inner resistance to change, and that causing us to cling to outdated routines, to cling to the old savior martyr energies that are exemplified in that axis across Virgo and Pisces. So it's a big deal, right? This is a big change, and one that I think we can actually really benefit from if we use it appropriately, right? We don't fall, to the victim mind here. We don't fall into old escapist behaviors. We stay present. We stay grounded with our divine self connected to our very human self. I hope all of that makes sense to everybody. It should, right? It's not like we haven't been talking about these kinds of things for a while, right? And it is, it is what it is. We're kind of training for some new energies. Now, one of the things I also did during the webinar was take a look at the movement of Pisces energy through human design. And here's this is where we get some little juicy tidbits about what to expect over the next 18 months as the nodes, move back and forth through the energies of Pisces and Virgo. So from January 11th, tomorrow, through the end of the month, the 30th, the North Node will be in the gate 25, the gate of spirit. So this is what exemplifies Piscean energy, right? Right here, the gate of spirit. The gate of spirit sits right here on your identity center. It is the center, the seat of the soul, right? Your soul lives here in this identity center. And it's really an invitation to the collective to embrace universal love, to embrace unconditional love, to embrace unity consciousness, right? To see things from the point of view of spirit, which is sorely needed on this planet at this time. So we have um, a focus on that. But here's what I know to be true about the gate 25. The gate 25, and everybody has a gate 25, whether it's defined. If it's defined, it's going to be colored in. If it's open, it's white, but now it's going to be colored in, right? It's going to be defined. Can sometimes get very upset with the lack of love that we see in the outer world. I know this because it's the sun in my design, human design, and sometimes it just hurts so bad to see people treating other people so badly, right? To see the idea of what's going to happen, or to think about the things that are going to happen to migrants here in the very near future, to see the effects of how transgender people or how the alternative sexual orientation community is going to be impacted by the energy of hate and fear over these next several years. So hopefully, all of us focusing on love can mitigate that and demand that we treat each other with kindness and generosity and tolerance. But the gate 25 is so sensitive, right? It hurts our hearts to see anything that isn't loving, right? So be prepared, right? The world may look very unloving for at least that first pass of the nodes through this gate. Now, from January 31st to June 13th, we go into the gate 36. You know, the gate 36, it's a gate of turmoil and crisis. It's called exploration and quantum human design. But this will be a time where we have emotional growth through experience, but often that experience is turbulent in the shadow energy, particularly turbulent, chaotic, even, and crisis oriented. So I would expect that likely during this period of time, we'll experience some types of crises that are really going to cause us to need to grow up emotionally, right? Emotional growth through experience whether the experience is of a joyful nature or is the experience of a not so joyful nature, but experience it is. And we are being asked to grow emotionally through that without being reactive, is the point, right? And being responsive is the way that we're headed. From June 14th to November 2nd, we move into the 22, which is on the solar plexus as well. 36 was also on the solar plexus. They're right here. Right here's 36, here's 22. The 22 is the gate of grace, and it invites us as a collective to cultivate emotional clarity and serenity, to know when it is that we are meant to speak in a way or express ourselves emotionally, and when it is that we should hold back, right? When is it that we should, stay quiet? So we learned that from that period of time. From November 3rd, 2025 till December 22nd, we'll be in the 63. The 63 jumps us from the body energies up to the mind energies. The 63 is up here in the head center. It is called the gate of curiosity, but it can also generate doubt. But what it can do is help us to seek clarity by asking questions, right? The questions like how, when, what, why, where, what's better, what can we do differently? And then it is also a gate that helps us grow through the process of uncovering truth and new perspectives, right? So the gate 63 is one that requires that Virgoan discernment to make sure we're not falling into beliefs that are out there that have no real basis in truth, right? That we're going to have to be really good at becoming discerning or good at discernment for these next 18 months. And as we end 2025 and move into 2026, we move into the gate 37, the gate of peace. And this is a gate that encourages us to nurture harmony, to nurture connection as a community, fostering support and mutual respect and tolerance and emotional balance. And this gate, literally on the emotional center, tells us that the solar plexus energy of peace comes from an inside job, right? It's not something that comes from outside of us. It's something that we generate from within. All right. So these blue lines here were all about the north node. Now I'm going to shift over to the south node and take a look at what the Virgo gates are that you will be experiencing. And those are going to be the magenta colored gates here. So from the 11th through the 30th, while the north node is teaching us about the higher energies of spirit, the south node is teaching us about embodiment, about how do we embody spirit. And we're embracing the body's wisdom here and the actual joy of being fully present in the moment in your body as a divine spirit. And that feeling that we can get sometimes of just being so grounded and so much into the joy of spirit, which is loving, which is kindness, which is generosity, magnanimity. I could go on with the words that, time seems to fly, right? Embodiment. From January 31st to June 13th, we'll be in the gate 6. Remember, 36 is the north node. We're experiencing and taking wisdom from the experiences. The south node puts us in the gate of impact, which encourages us to release conflict. The energy of war literally lives in the gate 6. So does the energy of peace and diplomacy. So it'll be an interesting time, I think, from January through June, how we are going to, as a collective, get into the need to release that conflict and become more diplomatic. And I'm not sure how that's going to look, right? Because initially, remember, we're learning to move in the new direction, which means that we're still experiencing the south node energies. So the south node energies here of conflict will still be there. But we have to choose, right? It doesn't just seamlessly happen that all of us have a collective aha and we wake up and go, oh, I'm going to be spiritual today. This is not the way it happens. We choose in every moment how it is we're going to show up. From June to November 2nd, the gate 12 called the gate of the channel. This encourages authentic self expression and the courage to share truths, but with grace and in right timing and with the right people, right? This isn't shouting from the rooftops to everyone who will listen, but more targeted to the people who are ready. And the people who are ready to hear your message are the ones that show up, right? They're the ones that say, I want to hear what you have to say, right? The gate 12 is on the throat center. And oh, I forgot to put that one in there. Gate 12 right here. And November 3rd through December 22nd, the gate 64 over here on the head center is called the gate of divine transference. Now, the gate 64, I think of as the little antenna, right? I think of all the gates in the head that way, but especially the 64, because it is like this very big antenna that brings in inspiration, it brings in ideas, and often it's met with confusion at first and the mental overwhelm that can occur because we're trying to think our way through the problem, right? And as we know, thinking can only take us so far. The action parts are all well below the neck and don't come from the head. So we may feel some mental overwhelm during this period of time. And, we're invited to release confusion and we're invited to embrace and trust in the divine and clarity through the divine spirit, right? Or through reflection and integration and following our intuition, our gut instincts. And then from December 23rd and well into 2026, we go to the gate 40, which is also here on the will center. And it's called the gate of restoration. And that encourages us to release overwork and self isolation. It also wants us to rest. This is a gate on the will center whose energy pulses on and off, and we are in an artificially production oriented world where it's go, 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 go. And if you're seen sitting down on the job, taking a 5-minute break to drink some water or eat something to, self care, likely your boss or other people are going to go by and say, what are you doing sitting down? What are you doing? Right? We've got to get away from that because the will center here, or ego center, or heart center, pulses on and pulses off. Off means rest. Off means I need to go to the bathroom. I need to feed myself. I need to drink some water. I need to get off my feet. And to continually push through, even when your body is telling you it needs something, leads to burnout, leads to illness, leads to literal autoimmune diseases, right? It leads to being so fatigued that you can't keep doing what brings you joy because there's no space in the body for it anymore. So this will be a big one, right? I can't even predict how this one might show up. But anyway, that takes us through the nodes for the next 18 months. Okay, so did I end that presentation? Oh, I got to do it over here. There we go. Sorry about that. All right. So tell me what you're feeling out there. Tell me what you're feeling. What is it you think you need from people like me as we go into 2025? That's a good question, don't you think? Like, how can I support you along the way? And I really want to know the answers to this. So don't hold back. Tell me. Okay. Yes, they give inspiring makeovers to people and uplift their lives, and they're beautiful to watch in action. There's this one guy that dresses like a girl, and I know that's kind of weird, but he is so engaging. I can't help myself. And he's got to be a Gemini because his hands, he's always talking with his hands, and his hands are beautiful. I absolutely love that show. Natasha, good morning to you. She says, interesting yesterday mirroring. I've been practicing being centered while others are being emotional and being told the actual world gets them harder or madder because I'm not reacting like the normal collective. Oh, I get it, right? Because they're looking at you like, well, why aren't you upset about this? And it's not that you're not upset about it, perhaps, but you're choosing to stay in peace, to stay centered, Natasha, which is what we're all going to have to do. Right? So there you have that. She's finding that holding love does make a difference while being centered during the emotions of others can shift the realities, as both people in the end say they can see it's more healthy, right? It is. And remember, besides being an axis of fear and victimhood and, martyrdom, savior energy, it's a well-being aspect, right? Virgo, the well-being of the physical body, and Pisces, the well-being of the emotion, the soul, right? The true you. So there we go. Yes, JVN, exactly, Christine. And J-Lo, I'm so thankful for your insight. Thank you so much. Every time I get new epiphanies of why things happen to me. I love that, right? And, I'm getting epiphanies all along with all of you, right? Things like snap together. Um, one of the biggest things that happened to me just recently was with my daughter, Heather, my oldest child. She's 41, so she's no longer a child, but she's my oldest. And she's like, "Mom, that timeline report you sent me is so accurate." She said, "Listen to this." And she's reading to me and the things that were said to in her timeline, which if you were attended the 2025 astrology, you got your timeline report for the 12 months of 2025. And she said, "You can't believe it. On this day, it says this, and that same week, this happened." And it went on and on throughout the whole of the year, as she's looking back at that report. So it's amazing to me if you really are tuned in. So now her hope is to tune in ahead of time so that she's prepared for what it is that might happen, right? So the work that we do like this is really important. And it's very I don't know. I think it's very grounding to be able to know ahead of time the potential impact of energies. Now, we never know 100% how it's going to show up. We just don't. But that doesn't mean that we can't help ourselves along by being more mindful of what the energies above are showing us for what's potential for below where we are. All right. So the last thing that is happening over this weekend, and as if the nodal shift isn't enough, Mars on Sunday comes into a trine with Neptune. Now, you would think that these two planets, who are so totally opposite from one another, right? Mars, all action and warrior energy, Neptune, more peaceful, imaginative, creative. You would think that they coming together in any way, shape, or form would create chaos. And it's so not true, right? Especially in a trine, which is a 100-degree angle between the planets that reflects a bit of peace and ease and grace between the planetary energy. And remember, Mars right now is still retrograde. And a retrograde Mars means that there's a lot of internal reimagining going on, right? A lot of introspection. He's not as keen in the sign of Cancer that he's in to do. It's like he can't do the things that he would normally do. So he's, being a little more, shall I say, passive in the sign of Cancer. And now trining Neptune, we have this, peaceful, moderating influence on Mars. So Mars and Cancer, or Mars, the planet of action and drive, right? Ambition. And he's in the nurturing and protective sign of Cancer. And here is this energy is more emotional. It's more defensive. It's more focused on home and family and safety and security. That's what Cancer is all about. Mars in Cancer tends to act from a place of feeling rather than logic and emphasizes that sensitivity to emotion and feelings, but also taps into intuition, right? And in retrograde motion, Mars slows down the outward action. So we know it takes us longer to do anything if we want to do something. It does create a time for more introspection and more reevaluation, more reimagining of ourselves, of our actions, of our lives. And it invites us to kind of reassess our motivations. Like, why am I doing what I'm doing? And we reassess our old emotional patterns. Why do I always react like that when this happens? Right. So Reflect on how you assert yourself in your areas that are tied to Cancer themes like family and home, emotional safety, and self care, right? Those are the things that are potential. And then Neptune in Pisces, it's the home sign of Pisces, right? I mean, it's in his home sign. And it's all about spirituality and dreams, the big dream, right? Intuition and the dissolution of boundaries, like blurring the lines. It softens and transcends. It brings compassion and creativity and an urge to connect to the divine and as well to the collective unconscious, right? To that, the dream world, I call it. And while Neptune's influence can be inspiring and healing, it can also carry the risk of escapism and confusion and over idealization, right? That it likes the ideal, it lives in the ideal world. But the trine aspect is harmonious, so it smooths the potential to channel Mars's emotional intensity right now into Neptune's spirituality and intuitive realm. And it creates opportunities for us for deep emotional healing and forgiveness, especially in our family and our personal relationships, right? It can trigger some inspired action combined, Mars's action potential combined with Neptune's visionary qualities or influences can really help us to act in alignment with our higher purpose and with our spiritual guidance. You all have a spiritual guidance team that is there 24/7 to help guide you along the way. Whether you know that or not, they're there, right? They're maybe the whispers that you hear sometimes about, do that, don't do that, right? Um, Pisces compassion softens Cancer's protective tendencies, encouraging us to be more vulnerable, to be more emotionally open, to be more sharing of ourselves with others. So it's an ideal time to mend fences, to release old emotional armor. Mars armor, right? Mars with Neptune releasing that old emotional armor, those walls that we might have put up between ourselves and others. And there's a lot of creative energy available, as of we always know with Neptune, but also with Mars, with Neptune here. It provides the drive to channel our creative energies, our creative impulses. So it especially supports artistic or spiritual pursuits. So tap in this weekend, play with your art medium, whatever that might be. Um, and how do we work with this energy? Because that's always the question. What do we do with this? Well, one, reflect. Don't rush. There's no need to rush to the end result because, like I said, Mars is in retrograde and that requires patience, encourages patience over impulsivity, even though Mars is usually impulsive, right? So assess your emotional responses and motivations before you take action on anything. Engage in spiritual practices, of course. There's a big deal. Meditation, dream work, journaling, all of that can help you to find guidance in Neptune's transit through Pisces and in this trine to Mars. Focus on emotional self care. What is it going to take to make you feel better, to feel less overwhelmed, to feel more joyful? And remember, that's an inside job. That's not something that comes to you from the outer world. It's something you work on from within. And what else? Well, the trine supports releasing grudges or emotional wounds. And it's an ideal time for reconciliation with another, especially with family members or with loved ones. So if you have something that is preventing you from, moving into forgiveness and letting go, this is a prime time to do this work. Of course, trust the process. The Neptune influence here is about surrendering control, realizing that you just have to trust in the unseen world and to flow with the currents of the energies rather than fighting against them. This is definitely a go with the flow kind of weekend. And we do have challenges to watch out for because our emotions are heightened. We can be more sensitive, and not just us, but others that we are around, right? It might leave us feeling overly sensitive or ungrounded. So practice grounding. Eat some chocolate. Of course, escapism, daydreaming, all of that kind of stuff, Netflix binging. Watch out for that, especially if you're finding yourself retreating too far back, right? Letting um, that isolation take over, right? We're meant at this time to be in relationship and to be sharing our insights and our unconditional love with others. And of course, confusion. Confusion is always going to be a part of the Neptunian experience. Retrogrades also heighten confusion. We have Mars in retrograde, Neptune in Pisces. So there's this foggy energy, right? So creates kind of an uncertainty in our lives. So if you're unsure, wait and wait for clarity. There's no need to rush. There's no need to be impulsive. Relax. If it's meant for you, it will still be there when you get clarity. If it wasn't meant for you, don't worry about it. It wasn't meant for you, right? So let's look at the connection between Mars and Neptune to the nodal shift because it's interesting, don't you think, that they're happening back to one another in all of this? So, as the nodes, I said, shifting to Pisces and Virgo, and the trine between Mars and Neptune, the themes of this transit become more about balancing the spiritual and the practical, right? The North Node in Pisces encouraging us to surrender to a faith or a higher power, our higher selves, to be more creative and to embrace universal concepts like compassion and love and unconditional love specifically. While the South Node in Virgo reminds us to release over being overly analytical or critical or perfectionistic, and the Mars trine Neptune beautifully mirrors the invitation from the nodes to trust the flow, right? Pisces, trust the flow while nurturing yourself and others without trying to micromanage the process. That would be the Virgo shadow, right? Virgo's micromanagement techniques. So it really is an interesting time, right? So we're being asked to flow over force, right? We don't need to force or push. We need to just flow. We're being asked to go through emotional healing, to reconcile with others where we have emotional hurts, or at least to reconcile within ourselves if the other person isn't available or willing to do that. You don't have to have the other person in order to go into forgiveness or reconciliation. It would be nice if they were open to that as well, but if they're not, there's not much you can do about that, right? Um, Creative vision. This is a great time this is the dream time, right? For me, I always think of these weeks leading up to February as the dream time. That's why the calendar is so difficult for me to January 1. That's why your resolutions don't really take wings and fly because it's not the right timing for resolutions. It's the time for dreaming, imagining, tapping into, what do I want in this year? What do I want in this next season? Align with the new nodes, reflect on where you can integrate more spirituality and more ease into releasing those perfectionistic tendencies, those Virgo, over and analysis, information overload, mental anxiety feelings. So it's a great weekend, right? It's a great weekend, although it's a lot. And it never seems to be as easy as I think it's going to be. So that's why I said, okay, right? Sometimes when the nodes shift or when any planet shifts into a new sign, there's all this potential for the high side of that sign. But what we often see first is the negativity, right? We see the not self, to use human design terms, before we can move into the true self, right? And this is collectively, but also individually. So take care, enjoy the ride because, we're here. Thank you, JLo. A reminder to all of you to smash the like button. I love that phrasing to support my broadcast today, right? Share it with your friends. Hit the like, hit the heart, hit the thumbs up, whatever it is that you are, wherever it is that you're listening to this. and then share it with your friends, your family, your networks of people. Thank you for that reminder. All of you are always reminding me of these things, and I love that. JLo, interesting. Go figure why I kept seeing wavelength type lines while in meditation. Well, interesting, even more so when you think about the transformational potential of Pluto in Aquarius, whose sign is a representation of those wavy lines of interference, right? Interference lines. So, hmm, all right. So let's see. Oh my goodness. Well, that's fun. All those cards are falling out. I'm going to draw us a card from the Animal Elders. The Animal Elders is a deck by Asha Frost. And here we go. It is beautifully um, creative, I think. It's got beautiful illustrations. They're simple, I think, is how I would say that. Oh man, and this one jumps out. Two jumped out. Elder Bear and Elder Bat. How funny. It's card 1 and card 2, but 2 came out first with 1 behind it. So we're going to read both of them. Elder Bear and Elder Bat. Elder Bear says, trust your senses. And no, that's not true. That was Bat that says, trust your senses. And Elder Bear says, rest your body. All right, good wise words. Let's see what this says. So, Elder Bear, every day you have a finite amount of energy, and it's your choice where and to whom you direct that energy. Elder Bear is asking you to slow down and turn your attention to your energy supply at this time. Check in. Have you been overextending yourself in any area of your life? Are there places where you might be leaking energy? Bears are strong medicine, often showing up as spiritual protectors. That sounds very Cancer like, doesn't it? During the fall, bears fiercely nourish themselves, gaining fat stores for the winter months ahead. Their spirit reminds you that to stay strong, you must assess your resources and get firm on what or who receives your attention and precious time. Elder Bear is calling you more deeply into your relationship with yourself, asking you to make an honest assessment of what is draining and fatiguing you. Just like the bear moves into a hibernation state where their heart rate, breathing, and body temperatures drop so they conserve energy, you are being invited to slow down so you can hear the whispers of your body, heart, and spirit. Rest is the place where we regain the capacity we need to create, live, and be. The medicine of slumber calls to you so that you may heal. Elder Bear welcomes you into their safe, warm cave with deep care. And then Bat, uh, trust your senses. Sometimes it's a fluttering, a sharp sensation, or an interaction that takes your breath away. Other times it's a dream, a vision, or a feeling of warmth in your heart. When Elder Bat flies into your life, you are asked to open your senses to the myriad ways that Spirit, Creator, and your ancestors speak to you. In the moment, you may feel that you are being critical or even judgmental when a sensation turns into strong knowing. You may feel the urge to repress your instincts to be polite or pleasing to others. However, this is not a time to bypass what the spirit world and your powerful wisdom are telling you. This is a time to trust your senses and to tune them to where you might need to take action. Just like the bat listens closely for echoes to guide their way, you too are receiving powerful waves. Oh my God, JLo, you're receiving powerful waves of feedback. Some may be warnings and others may be blessings. Whatever the message may be, know that it's not time for doubts or hesitation. Listen closely as Elder Bat offers you their gift of accuracy and heightened senses. Release all distraction and know that your energy field is finely attuned to detect both shadows and light. With Elder Bat at your side, your surroundings are constantly delivering messages. All you need to do is listen. Woohoo! Awesome. Okay, these are our two cards for the weekend, Elder Bat and Elder Bear. And That is it for me today. Thank you all so much for joining me. I will see you on Monday where we dive into the full moon. Should be an interesting one. Take care, everyone. Bye for now.